here's the thing, that one thing. Well, there's several. My story with the medical system is just nuts. There's different factors that why this got out of hand, why it was so crazy. If I had a family weighing in and protecting me, I don't think things would have gotten the way they did. And every doctor I've almost ever had has said to me, where's your family? And because they expect, if you have a family, they expect your family to be backing you up and fighting for you and trying for you to get the help that you need. And there were so many times I needed to be protected by my family, and I've never had help. And that's the truth. Almost every doctor I've ever had has said, where's your family? Like, are they helping you? Especially when my two partners died. Where's your family? Aren't they helping you? No, they're not. I mean, nobody should be unprotected. And so that was one terrible thing. And even now, I would have gotten the help I needed if I had a family. And and that whole thing, like, I was so naive, and it takes a lot to put all the pieces together. And you know what? You're not putting the pieces together when you're on all these medications, right? I just couldn't figure anything out. I couldn't figure anything out until I started really actually weaning off the medications and starting to figure it all out. And there are so many things to figure out, And I had one doctor tell me, you know way, way too much. He said, there's lots of doctors that don't want anything to do with you because you know too much. And it was said in a derogatory manner towards me, like as if I'm a bad person because I know too much. Because I spoke up after he wrote me an overdose, put it on paper, put it in front of me, and I started asking questions, and that's what his response was. He sneered it at me. And he's right. And it's easier to deal with people who don't know anything, right? But I didn't start figuring anything out until I was off the medications, right? Or getting off of them, in the process of weaning off of them. Way easier for me to figure things out. And I have complex PTSD. I come from an alcoholic family, and a lot of stress growing up in an alcoholic home, and generational dysfunction. And but no, there is no physical violence against the kids. And I never, that wasn't part of our lives. The kids were not ever, beaten up or anything. But and I've dated different men and stuff. I've never had a man like beat me up. But you know what? I've never had physical harm, from the people in my life. But I have, and and doctors, ironically, will use that PTSD or complex PTSD to patient profile me with, to misdiagnose me with, and I don't think they were doing it on purpose, but it's a huge flaw in the system or with doctors. If they're powerful enough to make mistakes like that and jump to conclusions without asking questions, then they should have adequate psych training. And none of them do, right? And so in my personal life, boyfriends, partners, family, no one has physically harmed me. And ironically, doctors have used that PTSD or complex PTSD to misdiagnose me with, and they've harmed me over and over. They have physically harmed me over and over and over. Serious physical harm. Like, I find that ironic, right? They sit there, they imagine all sorts of things. You know, they imagine you being tied to a tree as a child and someone's burning you with cigarettes and all sorts of insane things, right? Like my parents throwing me down the stairs and breaking my bones and not getting me medical attention. And all this, like, I don't know what they're trained about with children and PTSD at home, but they think the worst of the worst when they, and I'm not saying, you know, oh, someone hurt my feelings with words when I was little. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying I don't have significant complex PTSD, but what I am saying is no one was breaking my bones and not getting me medical attention. They think the worst of the worst. And I've had doctors who have heard my story and asked me, how are you still alive and what keeps you pushing forward in regards to the complex PTSD? But you can't just insert these imaginings in your head, insert that into someone's story, and now you're medically treating them with these imaginings in your head, right? I had another doctor that actually, it was the same female doctor that she did this crazy thing when I had my daughter, this crazy made up things in her head. And I should have, crazy. Like I felt like she was bipolar. She was so unstable. And making things up. And I find it ironic that doctors can misdiagnose us over and over and over again. Countless people with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and chronic diseases, they'll misdiagnose everything as anxiety or PTSD or a psych issue, right? It's notorious. And I find it ironic that they've jumped to all these conclusions and used this PTSD or complex PTSD, used it against me, wrongly misdiagnosing me over and over again. And they have physically harmed me over and over again. And it's all been swept under the rug. But yet they will continue to misuse this diagnosis against me. The worst thing for you, the most dangerous, one dangerous thing that can work against you is if all doctors can see in your chart that you have PTSD or complex PTSD, and all of a sudden they think that you don't have credibility. If you saw a house burn down, your family was in that house, and you saw it burn to the ground, and you've got PTSD. Imagine if that's being used against you for the rest of your life, and they're misdiagnosing your actual medical issues because you witnessed something horrible. And so they've misdiagnosed you over and over, multiple misdiagnoses, which ended up physically harming you. Or while they're misdiagnosing you, they're giving you drugs for something that they're misdiagnosed, and they end up injuring you. Or they think, many doctors think that you don't have credibility if you have, some kind of psych thing on your medical record. That you're, a hypochondriac, or no one has ever said that to me, but I'm just using that as an example. Like, oh, it's just anxiety, or the people who think that I was so harmed at home have harmed me physically over and over again, and now I'm disabled. These last injuries, 7 years and 5 years ago, like my neuropathy, I'm sitting here and I can't feel my hands and feet. Over and over, I've been medically injured. And none of it has been recorded, right? None of it's in my record. None of it's in my medical record. Brain injured from an epidural, walked out of there in a state of shock and trauma and losing feeling in my whole body. Pharmaceutically overdosed over and over again, which I can prove with my pharmacy records, and I have witnesses. Multiple misdiagnosis. Sleep apnea, misdiagnosed for decades. They're denying that. Sleepwalking, sleep eating, decades misdiagnosed. That was from the drugs. Respiratory depression, there's no way. They refused to diagnose that. Oh, hell, I still have respiratory depression to a degree, but man, it was bad for years. They were just plying me with sleeping pills, which I can prove. And here I sit, and I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't know how to sit here anymore. I'm too weak. I'm too sick. I'm too sleep deprived. The Chiari malformation, I'm not getting the help I need. Jaw airway issues that were misdiagnosed forever. Never looked into. I see a surgeon, I walk in, the sleep apnea, the airway issue, walks in, you're overweight, that's why you're having these issues. Never asked me my history, never had a conversation with me. My arms and legs are thin and muscle wasting. I don't have a fat, thick neck. I've got weight around my belly, and I have to lose the weight on my belly. There's no excess fat here. Walks in, doesn't examine me, doesn't ask me my history. I've had apnea for all my life, and I've been thin all my life until recently. Walks in, you're overweight. I don't know anymore. I don't know. I'm just bloody being tortured. I don't know how not to have a life. That's what I don't know how to do. I don't know how to not have any quality of life. I don't know how to continue with no quality of life.